everyone. Thank you for joining me this morning. Just give me a quick second whilst I get set up. While I'm doing that, why don't everyone tell me how you've been doing? I feel like it's been so long since I've seen you guys. So long. So let me know how you're doing and where you're tuning in from. And oh geez, internet's so slow today. It's been really slow this last week. What has been going on? Let's see. Oh, there's my face. What has been going on? So 2 weeks ago we had Pets Day. That was 2 weeks ago, right? Then last week I was away. It was my first vacation / personal trip in 9 years. So we went to, a few of us went to Port Dickson, and yeah, so first vacation in 9 years. The last time I went anywhere on a personal trip was 2011, and then after that it's been like, go for the last 9 years, and brings us into 2020. But oh geez, big face. Yeah, so everyone, let me know how you're doing, what you guys have been up to. Good morning, JW Liu. Then, oh gosh, what else has happened? Went bike hunting over these last few days because I'm looking to get some bikes for KFR to put in Kechara Forest Retreat, where we are based. In case you don't know that, we are based in Bentong, which is 45 minutes outside of Kuala Lumpur. And oh my god, I tell you, every time I go down to KL, I'm so happy to come back to KFR after that. Just the traffic, the congestion, the number of people, the noise. A long time ago, Rinpoche shared with us the rehabilitative benefits of being out in nature, being out in the forest. I'll quick sharing with you guys before we properly get started on today's talk. But Rinpoche talked about how when you think about torture and you think about being in an unpleasant, uncomfortable environment where you're actually trying to hurt somebody, you associate it with artificial buildings, artificial light, artificial sound. You associate it with concrete. You associate it with bright fluorescent lighting and noise that's very sort of harsh on your eardrums. And so that's what you associate with torture. But when you think about rehabilitation and you think about making people feel better, you think about peace of mind, and you think about people who are very stressed out and how they can recover. You think about wide open spaces, you think about greens, you think about trees, you think about the wind, you think about blue skies, you think about birds and all those natural sounds that you hear from the forest. So what Rinpoche said was, even our mental association that we are given indirectly in society is that torture equals artificial lighting and concrete and so on, and that rehabilitation and feeling good is a natural environment. So yeah, I can definitely feel that, having lived in a KFR, Kechara Forest Retreat, for 7 years already, that at the beginning it wasn't that easy, leaving the city, leaving civilization. But now when I go down to KL, it's so stressful. Like, I always come back with a headache, and once I come back to Bentong, it's like, oh, thank God I'm back here. So anyway, that is my little thing for this morning. And I hope everyone's been staying safe because I've been reading the news. Good morning, Lim Man. Thank you for joining us this morning. I don't know if you're in KFR sitting outside Wisdom Hall or in KL, but thank you for joining us this morning. Good morning, Sukfan. Thank you for joining us this morning. Nice to see you guys here again after a 2-week break. God, yeah, it feels like it's been so long. I've been reading the news and how the number of cases, new cases are rising again. So everyone, please remain vigilant and please follow the SOP, because we don't want things to lock down again, and we don't want things to be made more difficult, because everyone's already suffering as it is, economically, financially and all that. And the last thing we need is another lockdown. So, wear your mask, wash your hands, use hand sanitizer, get your temperature checked, social distance, everything, all right? And let's keep everybody safe. Okay, so before we get into today's sharing, as usual, do a short prayer to ascribe the source of the knowledge, information that's going to be shared today. I go for refuge in my Lama, from whom I've received these teachings. I go for refuge in the lineage Lamas, from whom my Lama has received these teachings. Okay, so thank you guys for joining me this morning. Good morning, Jerry. Hello. By the way, if you guys do experience any technical difficulties in the sense of mostly sound, please let me know, because I'm not actually using my mic today. I'm using someone else's mic, so not quite familiar with the setup. All right. So today, what I'm going to talk about. Before I do that, I'm going to do a recap of what I spoke about last week, which is that I talked about regrets. And I talked about where regrets come from. I talked about how they arise from clinging, whether it's clinging to a past experience, whether it's clinging to a projected / hoped for outcome, whether it's clinging to something that we've done that's been detrimental to others or to the environment, to our surroundings, or whether it's clinging to something that we hoped to get, but it didn't come to pass. All right. So I also talked about last week. I also talked about methods to deal with regrets and how to prevent them. And I did share a few methods and approaches, but I think my favorite one that really stuck out was to act out of kindness, to act out of the wish to benefit others, and to act out of the wish to for others' welfare. And personally, that one stuck with me the most, focusing out and doing things for the benefit of other people, even at the cost of ourselves or even at the cost of our own welfare. Why? Because what Rinpoche shared with us is that when you do things for the sake of other people, when you do things for the sake of other people's welfare, that it makes the difficulties and it makes the disappointments and it makes the obstacles and the challenges and the discomforts and the fact that you're tired and you're exhausted and all of that, it makes it so much easier to bear, because you know that you're not doing it for yourself and that you're doing it for somebody else. So the example that I gave last week was that it's like Saturday nights, right? So if you're sitting in traffic, now that it's the monsoon season, and you're sitting in traffic in downtown KL on a Saturday night, and there's traffic, it's raining, and you've been in the car for hours, and you're doing this because you're going to Kechara Soup Kitchen in order to give food and distribute food to the homeless. Knowing that you're going to go and do that, and you're going to go and serve somebody who's less fortunate, makes it so much easier for us to tahan or tolerate the fact that we are so uncomfortable in our cars and it's traffic, and we've given up our Saturday nights of clubbing or going out or, going to Yamcha or hang out with our friends. Knowing that you're going to go and do that for somebody else who's less fortunate makes all of those discomforts so much easier to bear. Whereas, if it's a Saturday night and you're sitting in traffic and in the rain and all of that, and you're doing that in order to go to eat, there's a part of you that will probably be thinking, well, maybe I should give this up because I'm just going out for dinner. What is the point of me suffering and sitting in the car for so long just to go out for dinner? All right. So because we're doing it for somebody else, it makes all of these discomforts easier to bear. And yes, good morning, Eng Jasmine. Thank you for joining us this morning. And hello, Penny. All right. So I think for many people, the idea that we have fewer regrets by focusing out and by being kind to others and by acting in others' welfare, even at the cost of ourselves, it sounds counterintuitive, because we are taught to think that in order for us to succeed, in order for us to have a life that's comfortable, in order for us to live a life that has as few discomforts and challenges and obstacles as possible, that we should be as self-serving as possible. So yeah, it might sound counterintuitive to some people that we're taught in order to win, in order to succeed, we should put me first, right? So how can you win if other people are winning? That is what, many of us are taught to think, that in order to win, you must win first at the cost of other people. That's what society teaches us, that's what society tells us, and that's the mindset that we're trained in. But you see, if you really think about it, it doesn't really make sense. Good morning, Debbie. Thank you for joining us this morning. All right, so why does it not make sense to put ourselves first in order to win? Why does it make sense to put other people first in order for us to succeed, in order for us to win? First of all, as human beings, we are social creatures. Yes, humans are introverts. Yes, there are humans that are extroverts and all of that. And the 16 different personality types and all of that. But when I say that we're social creatures, I don't mean social in the sense that like we like to sit down and go out with each other, or that we like to talk to each other, or that we like to socialize, so to speak. Excuse me. When I say that humans are social creatures, what I mean is that we are dependent on each other. On a mundane level, on a very basic, sort of worldly level, fundamental level, we are relying on each other, we're dependent on each other as a means of survival, right? But when I say that we're social creatures, what I mean is that on a higher level, we're also dependent on each other spiritually. And what do I mean by that? What I mean by that is that it's not possible for us to progress spiritually if we have no one to practice so-called against, or no one to practice with. And so a few weeks ago, I actually shared about this, right? That we are reliant on one another in order to progress spiritually. Why? Because back then, the analogy that I gave, and the analogy that actually, the analogy that I took from Rinpoche, was that it's very, very easy for us to practice in a cave. It's very easy for us to sit in a cave and meditate and then say, well, I've achieved compassion, I have achieved patience, I've achieved equanimity. It's easy to say all of that when you're in a cave and you've got no one to test yourself against. It's much more difficult to say, well, I've achieved patience and I've achieved perseverance and I've put down my anger and I've achieved compassion when you're outside in the world and you've got someone else to practice against. So it's like that story of Atisha. Why did Atisha bring the one person to Tibet with him who was so vehemently against him and so critical of him? Because if you want to say that you've achieved patience and you want to say that you've achieved compassion, it's practicing compassion against your biggest critics. It's practicing compassion against the people who present the biggest challenges and obstacles to you. Not the people who stroke your ego, not the people who praise you, not the people who tell you all the things that you want to hear. Alright, so when I say that humans are social creatures, what I mean is that for us to see how far we've progressed spiritually, it's how we deal with the people who affect us and who irritate and who bug us and who annoy us the most. Alright? And yes, it's easy to say that you're compassionate if you're sitting in a cave, but who are you compassionate with? Alright, so when I say humans are social creatures, what I mean is that we are relying on each other as well to progress spiritually. Good morning, Jillian. I hope you guys all had a good meditation session with JP this morning. Alright, so yes, being social creatures, we do rely on each other. And since we need each other, whether it's on a professional level in terms of work, whether it's on a mundane level in terms of survival, or whether it's on a higher level in terms of spiritual progress, since we need each other, why not create the best environment possible to coexist with other people? So by focusing out, by making other people happy, by helping them, by wishing for their success, by rejoicing in their triumphs, we're also sowing the seeds for a much more pleasant experience and a much more pleasant existence for ourselves. And a pleasant existence is something that is mutually beneficial. It's something that is a life where we can live without experiencing the regret of hurting one another. A pleasant experience is something that everyone can be happy in together. All right, so that's what you get by focusing out. That's what you get by wanting and helping other people to win. All right, so before we get into things today, before we get into today's topic, I just want to say a quick thank you to the sponsors of today's talk, who are anonymous as usual. Thank you guys so much for I make light of the fact that you're anonymous, but honestly, I am very appreciative of your continued support for the online activities that we've been putting out since March. Oh my god, this year has gone by so quickly. But I'm not going to get into that. So yes, thank you very much to the sponsors of today's talk. The first person, anonymous, would like to dedicate their contribution to the following. May all beings find lasting inner peace and happiness. May all become kind, wise, and have unwavering determination to benefit all beings. Thank you very much. Second sponsor is Stacy Isidro. I'm so sorry if I mispronounced your name. And the third sponsor is anonymous, and they would like to dedicate their sponsorship to all beings' liberation from suffering and the attainment of pure compassion and wisdom. So thank you guys very, very much for your continued contribution. And if you wish to support our activities, you can do so with a link in the description section of this video. So please click on it, because your support your support helps us to continue to make these online programs available. And I can see from the back end of this video that it's slightly pixelated. I can't tell if that's coming from the feed or if it's actually coming from my computer being slow, but there you go. All right. So, yeah, saying like this week, this year has gone by so quickly. And how I know this is when I started cycling, the people that I talked to, they were talking about training indoors because it was winter and it was cold and, they can't get outside as much. And then we moved into like warmer weather. And before you know it, people online are talking again about cycling indoors again because winter's coming. God, Game of Thrones reference. But yeah, they're talking about cycling indoors again because winter is coming and it's getting colder again. And I was thinking, oh my God, this year has gone by so quickly. And I don't know if that's the same for you guys, if you feel the same way, but if you do, let me know right in the comment section. So, what I'm going to talk about this week. This week, I'm going to talk about the dangers of overthinking. And the reason why I'm going to talk about that is, I don't know. It just came to me. I don't really have a plan for topics that I want to cover or subjects that I want to cover. It's just that it so happens that, as I'm talking to people and I'm interacting with people, that inspiration strikes and then it comes. So yes, this week I'm going to talk about the dangers of overthinking. Why am I going to talk about that? If you know me, you will know that overthinking is something that really, really, really applies to me. All right, mulling over things, taking too long to make a decision, worrying about making the wrong decision, and then kind of dwelling on a topic and going over it in my mind until it becomes larger than life. And it's that old proverb, that old adage where you make mountains out of molehills, right? So something that is small becomes very, very big because it grows. The idea of it grows in your mind and you overthink and you essentially overcomplicate it. So it's something that Rinpoche actually worked on with me. And it's something that, I'm still working on myself. So hopefully, fingers crossed, as the years have gone by, it's become better. So, when I talk about the dangers of overthinking, as with many of the other topics that I share with you guys, it's not a sharing that I can say that, I'm free from this, like, I don't need to work on it. Just like everyone else who watches this live stream during and after the live stream, it's something that applies to me too. All right, so we're all in the same boat together. And so, being that it's something that Rinpoche had worked on with me, that is definitely something that I know about. Overthinking is definitely something I know about from personal experience, something that I can share with all of you, and hopefully you'll find some parts of this sharing useful. So, good morning, Alice. Good morning, King Hoi. Thank you for joining us this morning. So, what is overthinking caused by? Overthinking is caused by clinging. Clinging. It's like what Buddha said, right? That clinging is the root of all our suffering. But overthinking is caused by clinging, and it's caused by clinging to the perceived importance of something. So essentially what happens when we're overthinking is that we're narrowing attention. And so we're saying that one particular thing is all important and that nothing else is important. So we focus on it and we build it up in our heads, how important this one particular instance, this one particular event, this one particular question or situation or topic or issue is. Overthinking is also caused by clinging to a hoped-for outcome. So if I do this, what will happen? Or if I do that, will I get this outcome? Or if I do something else, will I miss this particular opportunity? And so you play it over in your mind. And it plays in our minds over and over again. And then we end up thinking and trying to prepare for the worst whilst hoping for the best. Example of clinging to a hopeful outcome and how we end up overthinking. And our thoughts run away with us. It usually, an example that everybody can relate to is the example of romance or the example of having a partner or of having a family. And how when sometimes, fantasies build up in our heads. When I say fantasies, I'm not talking about fantasies. I'm talking about the projected outcomes that we want. So we cling to it. In the sense of we think, well, how can I accomplish what it is that I want? Then we think, how can I get what I want? What if I lose my chance at it? What if I am not able to get somebody? What if I'm not able to get a partner? What will I die an old maid? Will I die a spinster? What if nobody loves me? Oh my God, what if I never have children? And so that is why I talked about the perceived importance of something, because the same things that you worry about, the same things that you find valuable, or the same things that you put value on are not the same things that everybody else holds dear, or that everybody else values, or that everybody else finds to be precious. For example, we have this projected or this hoped for outcome, which is to have a family, or which is to have a partner. When we perceive that to be important and we cling to that, the fantasy builds up in our heads. And so when you think about it, you play over in your mind over and over again, and you dwell on it, the idea of it combined with the perceived importance makes this topic, or makes this issue or event grow in your head. And it's like a runaway train. It grows bigger and bigger and bigger until you can't stop. And it becomes larger than life. All right? So overthinking comes from the clinging to the perceived importance of something, as well as clinging to the hoped for outcome of a particular action or particular situation that we are in. What are the consequences of overthinking? Since we're going to talk about how we counter overthinking, what are the consequences, and why is it we should want to overcome, or want to prevent, or want to not engage in overthinking? Excuse me, jeez. This is what happens when you do a live video for 2 weeks and then you get out of practice. Or am I overthinking this? All right. So, what are the consequences of overthinking? First one, you don't get to enjoy what you have. When you overthink something, there is a possibility that your mind may shift towards the thought of, well, what if this situation that I'm in, what if this, let's say the situation is actually pleasurable, let's say the situation is actually something that's desirable, your mind could shift towards the thinking of, well, what if it ends? And yeah, it will end because of the law of impermanence. You could also overthink and think, well, what if this situation is taken away from me? And yes, this pleasurable situation that's in front of you may be taken away from you through the law of impermanence. All right? So when you overthink, what could happen is that you don't get to enjoy what you have because your mind and your thoughts start to spin out of control. And you reinforce your clinging through this. Why? Because you think, well, I must do whatever it takes in order for me to make sure that I don't lose this pleasurable situation that's in front of me. And so what happens is you think and you get into this mode of fear where I need to hang on to this because I might lose it, because it might end. And because you are so focused on that, you don't get to enjoy what it is that you have. The example that Rinpoche gave was the example of money and the example of wealth, which is that some people cling to the idea of being wealthy or cling to the idea of having a lot of money, and they build up their wealth, they accumulate their wealth, but it comes to a point where because they're so focused on clinging and building up their wealth that when they actually do have wealth, they're so focused on not losing it and on protecting it and on building it that they don't actually get to enjoy what they have, right? So they overthink it is, well, let's say I've accumulated $100,000 US dollars, 100,000 ringgit. I'm going to hang on to it. I'm going to keep it. Oh my God, but what happens if I lose it? What happens if the stock market crashes? What happens if there's an unexpected expense? What happens if there's an emergency that I need to pay for? What happens if my investments go bad? What happens if my business fails? And so I need to build it up. I need to continue building it up. I need to increase the amount of money that I have. I need to, increase the size of my buffer. And because they think of that and because they overthink it, what happens is they don't actually get to enjoy the 100,000 they have. And so then you end up being 80, you end up having all of this wealth and you've done nothing with it. And then you sit there when you're 80 thinking, why did I not use it? Why did I not do something good with it? And then that overthinking has led to 80 years of not enjoying something that you have and then led to a moment of regret. All right, so that's one consequence of overthinking. Another consequence of overthinking is reading a situation wrongly and thinking of things that aren't there. And so an example that I like to use is the example of getting a partner or getting into a relationship and people being attracted to someone else. So when people have a crush on someone else or they find somebody else attractive, what happens is there can sometimes be a tendency to read things wrongly. For example, seeing things that aren't there. Like when a girl sees a guy being nice to his mother, and then somehow it becomes, oh, you know, he's so filial and he's so devoted, and he's such a devoted son. Or a girl seeing a guy, or a guy seeing a girl being very, very good with, you know, their nieces and nephews, and thinking, oh, they're so good with kids, they will make such an excellent mother. A person being good with a child is not a direct correlation with them being a good parent. They could just be someone who is very, very entertaining, or someone who, you know, kids enjoy being around because they're very animated. But it doesn't necessarily mean that someone who's good with kids will make a good parent, right? So when we overthink things, we can have a tendency to read a situation wrongly and to see things that aren't there. And as a result of doing that, we don't get an accurate picture of what's going on. And so, being that we don't get an accurate picture of what's going on, we don't react accurately, and we end up wasting time. For example, wasting time on an unrequited love, or from a crush. So what Rinpoche said previously is that perhaps, you know, we spend so long thinking about a thing that we want, or chasing for a thing that we want, and during that we focus on that. And we keep thinking that that's what I want, that's what I want, that's what I want, that's what I want. But as we are so focused on that, during that time, the person that we're actually supposed to be with happens to come by, but we miss out on that opportunity because we've read the situation wrongly. We think that this person's perfect for me, we think that this person's good for me, and we focus on that. And because we focus on that, we don't see anything else that happens around us. And so the person that we're actually meant to be with walks by and we miss the opportunity, right? So overthinking can lead to us placing importance on the wrong thing. And because we place importance on the wrong thing, we read the situation wrongly or inaccurately, and so we don't react, and we end up wasting time, we end up missing out on opportunities. Hi Joyce! It's really nice to hear that you're going on a date soon. I hope that the date is enjoyable, and I hope the person is kind. That's something I talked about on my Instagram a couple of days ago, because I saw something on Reddit, and someone had asked a question on Reddit saying, what is it that a crush did that made you instantly lose your interest in them? And so this was about 10 years ago, and I remember it so quickly. It was literally like a light. The person 10 years ago, okay, not when I was doing this, but the person 10 years ago when I was a lay person was, they said, we were having a conversation, and then they said to me, I think it's okay to use people as long as they don't realize they are being used. And I remember instantly, I completely lost interest in them. Like, it was like this. I'm not even joking. So I hope the person is kind, because looks will fade, wealth will fade, but a person's quality and a person's characteristics will fade. And if we're going to be paired up and partner with somebody for 5, 10, 15, 20 years, at the very least, the person should be kind, all right? So I do hope that your date goes well and that the person is kind. So going back to the actual topic of today, which is overthinking, consequences of overthinking. We don't get to enjoy what we have, and we read a situation wrongly, and we think of things that aren't there. Also, we could end up generating a fear of loss over something that doesn't exist. Hello, Hui Min. Thank you for joining us this morning. And Hook Peng, thank you for joining me this morning. All right, so when you overthink, what could happen is that you end up generating a fear of losing something that doesn't exist. Meaning what? If your thoughts run away with you, you could possibly work yourself up into a state over a situation that doesn't exist or may never happen. Because we spend so much time thinking or worrying about it that although that thing hasn't happened yet, we kind of create this projection of what ifs. We create this situation or thought of, well, what if this happens? What if this happens? What if this happens? And then we generate this fear in us that we might lose something, but that something hasn't actually happened yet. All right. So, in effect, in doing this, you end up creating unnecessary suffering for yourself because the situation hasn't happened. The situation is completely projected. The outcome is projected, but you have let your thoughts run away with you of thinking what if, and you've created this fear of, well, what if I lose it? For example, again, going back to the analogy of the wealth, is that you have this $100,000, for example, in your bank account, and you keep thinking, well, what if I lose it? 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 You haven't lost it yet. It's still there, but you've already generated a fear in yourself of what if I lose it, all right? And so when you think, when you overthink, what happens is you can develop tunnel vision, and we neglect other areas that actually do need our attention. And so when our energy and when our thoughts and when our mental space is consumed by one problem, we end up becoming less productive overall, and we end up feeling more drained. An example is the parent that comes home from work and spends all of their time at home thinking about how it is that they can resolve something that's happening at work, or they spend all of their time thinking about what has happened at work and how they can prevent certain problems at work. So what happens when you overthink and you can't leave your work or you can't leave your problems at the door is that you may end up, for example, neglecting your partner, you may end up neglecting your child, you may end up neglecting your family and so on. And so the situation that you have at home, it doesn't get your attention, and what you have at work also doesn't get your full attention. And as a result of overthinking, and you develop this tunnel vision and sort of directed all of your energy in one area by clinging on to the perceived importance of one area, what happens is that neither situation is adequately resolved or adequately addressed. All right. Good morning, Iman. Thank you for joining us this morning. All right. So when you overthink, you also run the risk of overcomplicating a situation and reinforcing your habit to cling on to something, and you can't move on. And that's what is it that they say? Managerial speak or jargon. They call analysis paralysis, right? So you overthink a situation, or you overthink a question, or you overthink an issue, or you even overthink a decision that you've already made, or you overthink a problem that you want to solve, or you overthink a past situation, or you overthink about the future. All right, and so when you keep thinking about it over and over again, then what could happen is what people call analysis paralysis, where regardless of whatever the problem may be, no matter what the problem is, that you overthink to the point where you don't end up taking action. And so overthinking could stop us from taking action, could stop us from making a decision. And I'm going to give you guys a very personal recent example about that, all right? So overthinking, we think it's us focusing on something, but it's not necessarily the case. Overthinking is when you over-focus on something at the cost of everything else, and you don't give everything equal attention. And because you've focused so strongly on this one thing, it could lead to more problems because you make the wrong decision based on developing an inaccurate picture of what it is that you are thinking about at the time. All right. So, yes, analysis paralysis. Hello, good morning, Iman. All right. So, how can you react and what is happening right in front of you if you're not paying attention to all of the signs? If you're not paying attention and taking in all the information that's around you because you're just focusing on that one single problem. All right. So, how can you overcome, or how can you counter overthinking? And before I talk about this today, there's something that I actually want to point out. When I talk about things like overthinking or regret or blame or guilt and things like that being detrimental or being unhelpful to our practice, I'm not talking about it in the sense of judgment of ourselves. I want to make that very, very clear. Because I know that when we use these sort of negative words, or we address these negative habituations or non-virtuous habituations that we have, people tend to impose judgment on themselves, thinking that, oh, since I have this quality, then I'm a bad person. All right. So when I talk about these things, I'm not talking about it in terms of judgment of ourselves as being good or bad people. All right. So what I would really like is for people to stop thinking of themselves in this way. And I say that because I know that applies to myself too. All right. So I'm not going to talk to you guys about things that don't apply to me. we're not bad people because we overthink. We're not bad people because we feel guilty. We're not bad people because we regret. We're not bad people because sometimes we engage in blame or sometimes we react out of anger. We're not inherently bad people because of these characteristics or traits or qualities that we still possess. And when we think about ourselves in that way, it does become unhelpful. Why? Because we become so focused on the fact that we are bad that we sometimes get stuck. Stuck in the sense that we don't think about moving forwards. We don't think that it's possible for us to move forwards or that it's possible for us to do anything about it. All right, so yes, we might be angry. We might engage in blame. We might feel guilty. We might experience regret, and we might be jealous and all of that. But it doesn't make us a bad person. We might be ill-informed. We might be ignorant. We might not be exposed, but that is not a reflection of our entire inherent character. All right, I just want to make that clear, because these are all habits and these are all tendencies that we've developed over countless lifetimes. It's something that we've been dealing with for many, many lifetimes already. And so things that characteristics, qualities about ourselves that may be very not obvious, that we are very habituated into, may not be the same things that other people are habituated into. For example, some people may have a tendency or may be very prone to acting out of anger, whilst other people have no issues with anger, but they may have issues with, for example, miserliness. Somebody else may have issues with constantly, engaging in self-mortification and beating themselves up and making themselves feel bad all the time. But another person may not have that problem at all, and in fact, their problem may be that they're full of pride and they're full of or maybe they're very narcissistic, or maybe they don't have empathy. All right, so these are all things that all of us have and that we've developed over countless lifetimes. And just because we have them does not make us bad people. And that is something also that Rinpoche always stressed, all right? If we are inherently bad people, then it means that we have no chance to improve. It means that we have no opportunity to do anything about it and to transform or to make improvements to ourselves or to progress. Okay, so mentally flagellating ourselves and throwing judgment on ourselves is counterproductive. All of us are all guilty of overthinking. And what I want all of us to bear in mind is that it's not something that we can stop in just a few days, especially if it's a behavioral pattern, especially if it's a habit that we've been feeding for many, many years. So first things first. Good morning, Ash. Thank you for joining us this morning. I hope that you're well. It's been so long since I've seen you. I think a year, right? Anyway, if you're in Singapore, I hope that you're doing well, right? And staying safe. So, first thing to remember before I get into talking about how we can counter overthinking is that all of us are guilty of it. And it's not something that we'll be able to stop in just a few days or that we'll be able to stop immediately, especially if it's a behavioral pattern or a habit that we've been feeding and focusing on and developing for many, many years. All right, so first thing is be kind and be patient to yourself and with yourself and be realistic. And instead of thinking, how can I get rid of this habit overnight? And then falling into the cycle of overthinking about how to stop this habit overnight. What Rinpoche told us is to start by measuring our success by keeping track of how much time we spend on overthinking. The example that Rinpoche gave to us, the specific example was actually on anger. So, for example, if you're angry 10 times a day now, by applying Dharma practice, see over time that over time we become, instead of becoming angry 10 times a day, we become angry 9 times a day. And then over time, we become angry 8 times a day, and then 7 times a day, and 6 times a day, and so on, until finally you get to a stage where we are never angry. Ever. All right? So, taking the example that Rinpoche gave us on anger, we can also apply to overthinking, which is that over time, by applying these methods, see how much, observe your mind, and see how much and how often and how frequently we engage in overthinking. And that over time, it should reduce. And that's what we're aiming for, is reduction over time, all right? Some people are very magical, some people are very special, some people have the merits to stop overthinking immediately. That is not me. I don't have that ability. But then again, for example, some people, it's like smoking, right? Some people can go cold turkey, stop immediately. Some people can't. All right, all of us are different, so be kind, be patient with yourself. All right, so when I talk about these things, what I'm saying is that, look, all of us do it. All of us have this issue of overthinking things. It just depends on what it is that's in front of us and what it is that we perceive to be important. All right? And if you say that you don't have this problem, and if you say that you don't have this issue of overthinking, or that you don't have this issue with anger, or you don't have this issue with jealousy, or you don't have this issue with miserliness and so on, either you're a Buddha, and so I should print out your picture and put it on my altar and make offerings, or you are lying to yourself and lying to the rest of us. All right? So you choose. You be honest with yourself and see which one is the truth. All right? So since we're all dealing with this thing together, let's help one another and share with each other what it is that we know. And I don't have all of the answers, and so if you have any thoughts, any tools, any mechanisms that you have come across in the past that you have found to be helpful in stopping yourself to overthink and stopping this vicious cycle of overthinking, please leave a comment under this live stream and share with other people, because it may be something that you know that I don't know that may be helpful to other people. All right. So the first thing that Rinpoche taught me about overthinking wasn't actually a direct teaching, in the sense that, excuse me, it wasn't a mechanism, so to speak. It was more indirect, in the sense that it was Rinpoche actually pointing out to me that it's a tendency that I need to overcome. So the first step in addressing a problem is recognizing that you have a problem, right? So recognizing what the exact problem is. Choice. Sleep. Actually, funnily enough, that is actually, it's a very practical approach. If it's at night, yes, maybe not in the daytime, because as we know, based on Pastor David's sharing on the 10 Paranormal Zone on Thursday, sometimes too much sleep at the wrong time can lead to, guys, go and watch that talk. It seems to happen a lot to Pastor David when he's taking naps. Anyway, okay, so the first thing to addressing a problem is actually recognizing what the problem is, and that is what Rinpoche did, was pointing out the fact that I have a tendency to overthink, and helping me to see my pattern of thinking, how my thinking goes, and whether my mind was generating more solutions or creating more problems. Because that's what happens when you overthink, is that you end up creating more problems in your head, projected problems in your head that may not necessarily exist. So when you recognize that you overthink and you recognize that you have a problem, see your mind, watch your mind, and see if you're stuck in a loop of creating questions, in a loop of creating problems, or in a loop of creating issues, and then try to shift your mind to focus on resolution instead. And focusing only on the parts that matter, only on the parts of the event or the situation that matters. All right? So watch how your mind, and watch how consuming and tiring overthinking is. Watch how you become drained after overthinking, and watch how you have generated zero solutions during the process. All right, when you overthink, look at all of that and look at how you physically feel after you have engaged in overthinking. All right, so when you do that, what you're actually doing is you are meditating. And I know that I sound like a broken record when I talk about meditating as being a solution to our problems, being a solution or a tool for us to examine ourselves in order to counter jealousy, in order to counter anger, in order to counter blame, and all of that. But honestly speaking, meditation really does help. All right. Why? Because the purpose of meditation is to learn how to watch our thoughts without clinging to them. It's to learn how to have thoughts without clinging to them, or without indulging in them, and without allowing them to blow out of proportion, or without allowing them to become like a runaway train. All right. So, like what JP always says during the mindful morning meditation sessions, is when you see a thought, just observe it and let it go. It's exactly what Rinpoche said, is that when you're doing your breathing meditation, if you have a thought that arises in your mind, oh my God, my legs hurt, oh my God, my back hurts, why is it so warm, why are people so noisy, why are people making so much noise, why are my children bugging me, why are my children bothering me, and so on. Bring your mind back to bring your mind back to that point around your nostril, bring your mind back to your breath. So see a thought, observe it, and then let it go, and go back to focusing. Doing this over and over again, and practicing this over and over again, where we watch a thought, we observe a thought, and then we let it go, and we bring our thought and our mind back to that point around our nostril, or back to our breath, or whatever it is that we're focusing on at the time. Practicing this over time helps us to develop focus and helps us to develop control over our minds. And that is what is meant by practicing meditation. What is it that you're actually practicing? When you're practicing meditation, it means that you're doing something over and over again until you become very good at it. And so when you develop the skill of focusing your mind back on your breath, it's a skill that you can then transfer over into other areas of your life. And so when you can focus your thought, when you can train and practice and train yourself to focus your thought on things that are useful as opposed to things that aren't helpful, you can bring this over into other areas of your life to stop yourself from overthinking, right? So one very practical way that all of us should be engaging in order for us to counter overthinking, is engage and practice meditation. Meditation also, especially when combined with breathing exercises, sharpens our mind, and it decreases our anxiety, it increases our awareness, so that we develop the ability to catch ourselves from overthinking. And that when you do that, when you catch yourselves overthinking, take a deep breath. It's like what people always say, when you find yourself about to react in anger, stop. Take a deep breath before you bang out the angry email to, because that person's so annoying and you can't help yourself. Stop, take a deep breath, and break that cycle. When you stop to take a deep breath, when you stop to do a breathing exercise, and you take a moment to ground yourself, what you're doing is that you're actually giving yourself a chance to break that vicious cycle of overthinking, or to break that vicious cycle of falling into anger, and giving yourself a chance or an opportunity to react in a different way. All right, so when you find yourself wanting to react out of anger, and you stop yourself, and you take a deep breath, you are not going to write that angry SMS in response to somebody else. You're not going to write that angry email in response to somebody else. You're not going to be very short, very curt. Why? Because you're giving yourself a chance to react from reality, which is the actual message or the actual content of the message, as opposed to reacting out of emotion. Same thing with overthinking, is that when you find yourself and your thoughts are like a runaway train, when you stop and when you recognize that you're overthinking, and you stop and you take a deep breath, and then you take a moment to ground yourself, you help yourself not to fall into the pattern or to continue the pattern of overthinking. All right. Ah, my God. So it looks like, I don't know. Can you guys still hear me? Leave me a message, because it looks like the internet slowed down. Right. So another way of breaking the cycle of overthinking or counting overthinking is by meditating on the nature of overthinking, realizing that overthinking is entirely man-made and is entirely within our control. It's our choice to make things less or to make things more complicated. It's our choice to engage in overthinking. Overthinking is not a natural response. Why? How do you know it's not a natural response? Because not everybody engages in overthinking, and not everyone engages in overthinking on the same things. Right? Because it's about perceived importance. What you perceive to be important is not necessarily the same thing that I perceive to be important. All right, so given that overthinking is clinging on to the perceived importance of something, if we stop highlighting its importance, if we stop focusing on it, if we stop giving energy to it, does it still remain important? So you can think in that way. Internet so slow. I can't tell if the feed's still going. Oh, actually, hold on. Instead of panicking, you know what? Use my phone and see if it's still working. Hi. Give me 1 second. Yeah, it's still working. Okay, cool. So, whilst my computer is going back to normal, all right, I'm going to use my phone. All right, so given that overthinking is about clinging on to the perceived importance of something, meditate, think about the benefits and disbenefits of overthinking. Meditate on the nature of overthinking. If we stop highlighting the importance of something, if we stop focusing on something, if we stop giving energy to something, does it still remain important? Why does it remain important? And is it truly and ultimately important to us? If it's not, and if this particular situation is not that important, then will overthinking help us to solve it? Will focusing on it and will paying attention to it resolve it? When you engage in meditation on the nature of overthinking, again, what you're doing is you're giving yourself a chance to break the cycle of overthinking. Why? Because you're allowing yourself time to pause. You're allowing yourself not to fall into the pattern of overthinking, and allowing yourself to get off that runaway train and not to continue it. All right. Hi, Choda. I hope everything's okay in Nepal. Oh my God. With the current situation with COVID, stay safe, all right? Stay indoors and please don't run around Kathmandu. I know Kathmandu is very interesting, Kathmandu is very exciting, and I wish I could be back in Kathmandu right now, but please stay safe. Another way of countering overthinking is by meditating on the facts of a situation and not on fiction, by looking at the actual facts of what it is that you're facing and not on the insubstantial thoughts that we create. When you look at the facts of something, you gain a better understanding of it. When you gain a better understanding of it, and when you gain a more accurate picture of it, then it allows us to find solutions more easily. So one recent example of me overthinking things and overcomplicating things and then working myself up was 2 months ago. I got invited to join a local badminton club, and I'm someone who I'm introverted, all right? And so I find social situations quite uncomfortable. I find meeting new people quite uncomfortable. And I find it to be quite an effort. I find it to be actually pretty tiring. So when I was invited to join this local badminton club, I started to overthink. I started to play it up in my head and blow it out of proportion. I was thinking, okay, so the benefit is that I get to meet new people and of course get to introduce them to Kechara, get to introduce them to Dharma, get to share with them what it is that Rinpoche taught. That's the benefit of joining. And of course, becoming healthier and all the rest of that. And then on the other end of the spectrum, I was thinking, yeah, but it's a social situation. I don't know these people. What if they are so good at badminton and I can't keep up? What if they all speak Chinese and I don't speak Chinese? What if I can't communicate with them? And it started to run away with me, And so after a few days of thinking, a few days of overthinking, there was no solution to it. And all I was doing was working myself up into a frenzy. And so what I did was I talked to someone. I talked to a friend. And this friend has this ability to immediately break that cycle. So what he said was, well, if you don't like it, just leave. And when he said that, I was like, oh my God, I'm such an idiot. Because I had overthought the situation and I had overcomplicated it. It hadn't even occurred to me that if I find the situation to be extremely uncomfortable or to be extremely unpleasant, I can just walk away. There's nothing that obligates me to continuing it. And when he said that just one simple line, if you don't like it, then just don't go. I was like, Pastor Gina, you're such an idiot. Why did you waste 3 or 4 days thinking about something that's so small and then, again, turning up, making a mountain out of a molehill? All right, so one way of breaking the cycle of overthinking is by talking to people, talking to others, and asking a question. And that is why it's so important to have Dharma brothers and sisters, why it's so important to have and to be in a Dharma community. When you are in a Dharma community or you are with Dharma brothers and sisters, what happens is that you join with a like-minded group of people who want the same things as you, who come from the same background as you, who are trying to prioritize the same things as you, and who can remind you of all the things that you find important, who can nudge you back on the path when they see that you're starting to wander off a little bit, who can offer you support, and they know where you're coming from, and they know what it is that you really want out of life. And it's like when you are going to therapy, or you're going for example, like Alcoholics Anonymous and things like that, and you find yourself in an environment with people who are facing the same challenges as you are, and who are trying to do something about it, and who are trying to pull themselves out of it. Exact same thing in the Dharma community. That is why it's so important to have a Dharma community, to have Dharma brothers and sisters, all right? Sometimes your Dharma brothers and sisters may tell you things that you don't want to hear. Sometimes they may tell you things that you find to be unpleasant, or they may remind you of qualities of yourself that you find to be unpleasant, that you don't really want to hear about, and you find to be very uncomfortable. Sometimes your Dharma brothers and sisters may even give you advice that goes wrong. But when you talk to them, and when you ask questions, and you open yourselves up to somebody else, even if you make a so-called wrong decision, by talking to other people, what can happen is that one is, yes, they help you to break the cycle of overthinking. They also help you to become more solution-oriented, as opposed to being problem-fixated, all right? So, meditation, being in a supportive community of people, can help you to become more solution-oriented and less problem-fixated. So, being in that kind of environment helps us to learn to ask different questions. So when we overthink, the kind of questions that we overthink and the kind of questions that play through our minds and we ask ourselves are things like, well, why did this happen? What if it happens? What if this happens? What might happen? When you overthink, it's about being anticipatory and practical. No, sorry. When you stop overthinking, what you're actually trying to do is you're trying to train yourself into asking different questions. And so you're trying to train yourself to becoming anticipatory and to becoming practical, as opposed to being led by worry and as opposed to being led by anxiety. So instead of asking questions like, why did this happen? What might happen? What if this happens? What if I do this, this happens? You learn to ask different questions. For example, if I apply this solution, what are the potential consequences? Can I handle those consequences? If those consequences come up, how can I address them? Or how can I mitigate the consequences? So if you look at the type of questions that you start to ask, even the questions that you ask become anticipatory and become solution-oriented, right? Not problem-fixated. Other questions you can ask are questions like, well, if these consequences come up, is there somebody that I can consult or somebody else that I can partner with in order to help me to address these consequences, in order to help me mitigate these consequences, or in order to help me to see things differently so that I can address this situation more accurately and more effectively. So that is why it's important to have a Dharma community, important to have Dharma brothers and sisters, because that is a community or that is a body of people that you can refer to. And in the case of us being in Kechara, one community that you can immediately access is sounds like a commercial break, it's not, but one community that you can immediately access is the Kecharans and Friends Facebook group. That is exactly what it is for, because there are many, many questions that we have in our minds that when we don't have people to refer to or we don't have people to discuss it with, that we end up engaging overthinking, and we end up not thinking of a solution or not thinking of a practical approach, but we end up thinking of all the what-ifs. Talking to other people, asking questions is something that Rinpoche actually encouraged, and it's something that Rinpoche actually trained us to do, to stop us from overthinking. Rinpoche always trained us to talk things out in order to come up with a solution. And by talking things out, it trained us to become solution-oriented. Whenever there was something that was in front of us, Rinpoche, even though Rinpoche already had an answer, even though Rinpoche already had a solution and had a direction always, Rinpoche would call a meeting and have a few of us sit together and then to discuss that problem or to discuss that challenge or the event or whatever is in front of us. Even if it wasn't a challenge actually, even if it was literally just something that had happened, Rinpoche would have us come together and talk. Why? Why is it that Rinpoche had us discuss things with one another? First of all, by talking things out, you train to become responsible for what you say. Because if you offer an idea, if the idea is shot down, or the idea is not accepted, you still have to be responsible for what it is that you say. Or if the idea is accepted and you go forward with it, it was your idea, you have to be responsible for it. Rinpoche always had us talk things out, to train us to develop care, to push ourselves to think of a solution. Why? Because when you're faced with a problem or you're faced with a challenge, you're faced with an obstacle, by talking things out, you are learning to see how other people think. By learning to see how other people think, over time, you learn to develop new ways of thinking yourself. And each time you propose a solution and the solution is not accepted, you can't just sit back and think, well, since my solution is not accepted, I might as well just stop thinking. No. All right. With Rinpoche, it was always, okay, well, if your solution is not accepted, then how? Then how? Then how? Then what next? And so by training us to talk things out, Rinpoche was also training us to develop care by pushing ourselves to think of a solution, by not giving up. By verbalizing, Rinpoche was also showing us, or also training us actually, to brainstorm for ideas. And actually, Rinpoche once also explained that sometimes when you have a problem in front of you and you keep pushing yourselves to think of a solution to that problem, and you don't give up, and you keep going and going and going, actually what is happening is that by doing so, we open up a karma, or we create a karma for a solution or for an idea to arise. And there have been so many situations, countless situations when, again, we have had a problem and we've had an issue that we needed to resolve or needed to address, and people will ask us, why are you guys sitting in a meeting for like 4 or 5 hours? Why don't you keep your meetings short and straight to the point? No. What Rinpoche explained once was that sometimes these long meetings are necessary to either purify the karma for something or to create the karma for something to happen. And so we talk, and then after 5-6 hours, then somebody will come up with a solution, and it just happens to be the right solution or the right answer. All right, so Rinpoche would always have us talk things out to train us to be responsible for what we say, to develop care, to push ourselves to think of a solution, to train us to become solution-oriented, not problem-fixated, and by verbalizing, to get us to brainstorm for ideas, to get us to learn to ask the right questions, to get us to learn to rely on one another, to get us to maybe create the karma for a solution to arise, to train us to see things differently and to consider different points of view. And it helps because what happens is that when you have different people in a group, what you have is you have different ideas, you've got different backgrounds, and you've got different upbringings, all in the same group. Some people are older and they have more experience, whereas some people are younger and they have fresher ideas. And so by verbalizing and by talking things out, you can learn from one another, and you also stop yourself from overthinking, because overthinking is when you focus and you develop tunnel vision on something, and then your thought runs away with it, and you start to focus on the worry and the anxiety and the fear as opposed to resolving the situation itself. Last thing I want to share, because it's almost 1 hour, about how we can overcome or counter overthinking is, I'm going to end like this. And you guys are going to be like, oh my God, Pastor Gina, of course you're going to end like this. But it's true. It's by relying on a guru. All right? Why and how does relying on a guru help us to counter overthinking? About, I would say 3 years ago? No. Oh my God, 5 years ago. The building I'm in at the moment actually is the gift building. It's now our office, but back then it was the gift building. And why was it called the gift building? Because when people made offerings to Rinpoche, or when Rinpoche wanted to select something to send to people, this is where all the gifts were stored. So back then, this was the gift building, and Rinpoche had a group of us come here, and Rinpoche sent everyone to go and look for certain gifts for certain people. So it was just, then Rinpoche was sitting on his own at the sofa area, and then Rinpoche looked at me, and then Rinpoche went, and then called me over. And it was just me and Rimchi. And then what Rimchi did was Rimchi held my hand and then told me, in the future, you may see me do things that look unusual. You may see me do things that you don't understand. You may see me do things that look opposite to what it is that I want to achieve or what I want to accomplish. When you see that, don't have doubt, don't develop doubt. When you see that, when you see that happening, have faith. Just do. Just follow what it is that I do. Even if you see me do things that are unusual, even if you see me do things that don't look like what it is that I want to accomplish. When you see me be happy with me. When you see me be sad, comfort me. Just basically, to paraphrase, go along with it. So that's what Rimchi told me to do. All right. What Rimchi was encouraging me to do at that time was to surrender. And to not overthink what it is that I would observe Rinpoche doing in the future. When I say this, I want to make it extremely clear that Rinpoche never, ever, ever broke any of his vows. Rinpoche's vows were paramount to Rinpoche. They were ultimately the most important thing to Rinpoche. When people pray, may I protect my vows even at the cost of my life, for most of us, it's lip service. If you are going to be completely honest, for most of us, even our refuge vows and saying, may I uphold my refuge vows even at the cost of our life, for most of us, if you're really being honest, it is mostly lip service. But with Rinpoche, it was 100% true, all right? I can tell you this because privately and publicly, Rinpoche was exactly the same. So I want to make it very, very clear that Rinpoche didn't do anything ever to break any of his vows. But Rinpoche did do things that people might find unconventional. Rinpoche did do things that on the surface look very unusual. But when I tell you guys this story, what I want to share with you is that surrendering to our guru and relying on our teacher is the ultimate antidote to overthinking. Because we stop asking why and we just do. When I say that, people may think, well, is it slavery? Is it being part of a cult? And I think that is a very elementary approach, very basic approach, or very basic view to a guru-disciple relationship. As I've mentioned in the past, every day, on a day-to-day basis, we surrender to other people. We surrender to the expert advice and expert opinion of other people all the time, and we do it without question. When we have cancer and you go and see an oncologist, do you sit there and do you question the oncologist? Why like this, why like this, why like this, why like this? What is the basis of this treatment? Do you sit there and do you doubt your oncologist? You may go for a second opinion, you may go for, and you may do further research, but once you started your chemotherapy, do you sit there and think, well, is this chemotherapy the right thing for me? And completely overcomplicate the situation? No. When you have figured out that this is the oncologist that you are going to go for and that this is the treatment that you're going to go for, you stop doubting. You surrender to the advice of your oncologist. When you ask a question to understand something, it's okay, it's fine. But when you ask a question in order to poke holes or in order to find fault or in order to criticize or in order to make somebody feel small or in order to put them down, that's a different kind of question asking, all right? So, again, we surrender every single day. All the time. Surrendering to other people. When you are trying to learn a new trade or you're trying to learn a new skill and you become an apprentice, you surrender to your master. Whatever it is that your master has to teach you, you just follow. If he wants to be harsh with you, you follow. If he wants to be soft with you, you follow. Why? Because what you want is the knowledge that he can give you. You want the experience that he can teach you. When you are interested in martial arts, you surrender to your sifu. However your sifu chooses or wishes to train you, you surrender to them. So why is it that on a day-to-day basis, we are okay to surrendering to other people? Why is it that when you go to a bank and you consult a financial advisor, you are okay relying on the advice of your financial advisor? Why is it that when you want to invest in something, you're okay relying on the advice of a stockbroker? Why? But when it comes to a guru, we're like, surrender to a guru. Why aren't you being a slave? Aren't you joining a cult? Why is it that for everyday mundane secular things, we're okay surrendering to other people, but we're not okay to surrendering to a guru? When you surrender to your oncologist, you're doing it because you are giving yourself an opportunity to stop overthinking and to stop focusing on the cancer and to stop developing fear about the cancer. When you surrender to a financial advisor, you surrender to a stockbroker, you're giving yourself an opportunity to stop overthinking about the investments that you make and how the investment may generate fear because you're risk adverse. You rely on their expert opinion, right? So same thing with a teacher, same thing with a guru. All right, so after you checked out your guru and after you've taken refuge, after you've decided that, yes, this person really is qualified to lead me to enlightenment, by putting your trust and by putting your faith and fully relying on the person, to paraphrase Pastor David's book, there's no way but up. You can only improve. All right? So by surrendering to somebody else, that is a means of countering our overthinking because you stop thinking and you just do. Is there evidence of how relying on a guru can stop overthinking and therefore lead to spiritual success? If you guys are familiar with the story of the Mahasiddhas, Naropa didn't go up to Tilopa and be like, why are you asking me to do this? Why are you getting me to do that? Why? All right? Naropa just surrendered and he did. What happened? He became a teen. If you look at Milarepa didn't go up to Marpa and be like, why are you asking me to do this? Why do I have to build the house? Why are you getting me to do your chores? Why do I have to clean for you? Milarepa never asked that. He just did. And what did he do? What happened after he surrendered to his guru? He got attainments. Right? So there are so many historical examples. If you want even more recent examples, look at all the examples of people, even within Kechara, who have surrendered to their guru. Look at what it is that they're able to accomplish. Look at somebody like Pastor Yei and how she has built up the puja team and how she has built up the puja services because she surrendered to a teacher. Look at somebody like JP and how he has surrendered to his guru, how he surrendered to Rinpoche. Look what it is that he's able to build. Look at somebody like Beng Kui and how she surrendered to Rinpoche. Look at how she was able to bring design during the time of Corona where you can't travel. Look at how it is that she was able to bring the stupa over, to design the stupa, to get it filled, to get it mantracized, to get it consecrated. Look at what she was able to accomplish. So when people surrender to their teacher and when people fully trust and rely on their teacher, you can see success. All right? And as a very, very minor side benefit, that's how you overcome or you counter overthinking. All right? Because you stop asking why. All right? And you just do. So if you look at the difference in results of people who always ask why versus the people who do, you will see that there are very tangible, practical benefits to surrendering to our teacher and to relying on the teacher and to relying on the teachings of our teacher in order to counter overthinking. All right, so, my God, Facebook's driving me nuts today. But as far as I can tell, we are over an hour, all right? God, hi Xiaoli, thank you for joining us. Hey Martin, hope you had a good cleaning session today. Hi Victor, hi Kai Feng, I'm so sorry if I mispronounced your name. Hi Anne, hello Irene, hi Jacinta, and hi Carson. Alright, so thank you very much for joining me today. If you guys have any questions, because I've completely run out of time again, please leave me a comment in the live stream and I will answer it as soon as this live stream is over. Before I go very quickly, I just want to remind you guys to reflect on what has happened in the past week. Without falling into the danger of overthinking, think about in the past week, has there been an instance during which you overthought something and overcomplicated something beyond what it needed to be? And as you move into this new week, set a good intention for yourself not to fall into that trap, that you are determined to recognize when you're about to fall into the pattern of overthinking and you're determined to do something about it, to stop, to give yourself a moment, to break that cycle of overthinking by meditating on the nature of overthinking, by taking a deep breath, by putting into practice the skills that you've learned during the morning meditation sessions to focus on being solution-oriented and not problem-fixated. All right? And to think, well, if I'm falling into this trap of overthinking, what can I practically do about this situation, as opposed to building up in your head and then generating that fear of something that hasn't happened or may not happen. All right. Before I go, very quickly, a few reminders. Number one, Doji Shukden Sadhana at 10 p.m. tonight on the Chinese Kechara Facebook fan page, followed by Tuesday, 9:30 p.m. Easy Dharma for the New Normal by Pastor David. And he is doing Introduction to Buddhism. All right. And then on Thursday at 8 p.m., it's Rinpoche's Swift Return Prayer on the Kecharan and Friends Facebook group. And then on Thursday, this Thursday night, on the 10 Paranormal Zone, it's just a reminder, it's JP's last paranormal sharing. And he will be having a very special guest, which is Lee Kim. All right, so guys, please do tune in and join us for that sharing on Thursday night. Okay. Before I go, reminder, please do your dedications. After this live stream is ended, I will be doing mine as well, for taking the time out to listen to my ramblings this Sunday morning. All right. And thank you guys so much for joining us. And thank you very much to our sponsors for today's talk. Again, thank you for making it possible for us to continue to do these online programs. All right. And if you do have any special requests, please leave me a comment or send me a message, and then I will cover that in a future video. I do realize that there is a topic that was requested by Stacy on Idle Chatter. I will get to that soon. All right. So again, thank you guys so much for your support, and I will see you same time, same place next week for an as yet undecided topic. Hopefully inspiration strikes me today and then I can start preparing. All right. So I'll see you guys next Sunday. Bye and have a good week.